ultimately, porn use leads to erectile dysfunction for most men because of these changes in dopamine. And then the urge or the feeling compelled to pick your phone up, that is a call from your brain to get a hit of dopamine. It's not about the thing you're doing on the screen at all. It's about the pursuit of more dopamine, which is then reinforced through habit loops. So a lot of men will watch porn at night or before bed, and it's a very good, sleep, helping a person to fall asleep, even though it's really disrupting the sleep cycle. So, to answer the question about adults versus children or young people, the mechanisms are the same, but those reinforcement loops and those habit loops may have, reinforced themselves for 5, 10, 15, 20 years plus. Where again, it's that super normal stimulus, it's fantasy, it's super high levels of dopamine. And then basically, a person needs it to feel not just good, they need it to feel normal.
Yeah.
But because of these changes in baseline, our work, relationships, and hobbies no longer hold enough dopamine. There's all the dopamines connected to pornography or masturbation. Porn's a
Yes.
symptom
Yes.
of the all the other stuff we talked about. That's the
Mm.
problem.
It's so good
You're
to see
good?
you. It's just been
Yeah, you
a bit of
too.
a bit of a test trying to get together, huh?
It has. I said to Julieta, I'm like, third time's the charm.
Yeah, that's exactly
I'm like,
right.
could you please confirm third time's the charm? She's
I
like, yep,
know, I know, I
we
know.
already have a new link. And I'm like, okay, good. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
I know.
crazy
Well,
times.
at least we're here now, right?
We are here. That's the main thing. People must get bored of me saying like I had a podcast just recently. It's the same thing. We've got like daylight saving here in Australia, where it's our summertime, where our spring and your winter sort of thing, and you're on the other side of the world. It's
Yep.
just like it's just a mess. I don't know how I
Yeah.
fucking keep this thing
Yeah.
going, to be honest with you. Just like
I know. Yeah.
stuffing up every
I
five
know.
minutes.
I know. And I have a lot of clients, I work with people all over the world. The
Hmm.
trickiest ones are in Australia and New Zealand for that exact reason. I'll get on a meeting and it'll be like the middle of the night for someone. So I have
Yeah.
dedicated times now for clients, in your area because it really can be tricky trying to connect. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely tricky, and it's just one of these things. Like it's such a blessing to have this opportunity. I never take for granted that I can, through this, mechanism of internet and screens and things like that. We can have a real-time conversation, even though I'm from the future and you're from the past. So we're we're talking in
I
like different realms and everything. It's fucking amazing,
it
but at the same
it
time, it comes with a couple of complications.
It does. It is amazing, because I'm always, low key preaching on the dangers of screen time, which
Mm.
are true and valid. But at the same time, it's our greatest asset too, that if we use it well, we can
Yeah,
connect. Yeah, which is pretty cool. It's very cool, right?
yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
how do you? That's a really, really good segue into screen time because the information that I've learned about you and in with respect to porn addiction, you talk a lot about your dopamine receptors, how it sort of messes with certain hormones and things that are going on in your brain and your mind and all the rest of it. But you also are a person who I know is on the screen all the time, right? So like, you know,
Yeah.
it's a
All the time.
juxtaposition, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I always joke that it really is kind of crazy trying to, like, the world is just nutty right now, like trying
Mm.
to communicate to people about the dangers of the system within the system.
Yeah.
Like that, and it really is about intention. It's about intention. Everything I do, even though I do a lot of it, is very, very intentional. So I
Mm.
don't really do any passive consumption of anything. And
Really?
I'm writing my next book, and it is just blowing my mind. I'm so excited about it because, like, porn is one thing which we definitely need to dive into, but
Yeah.
Just the whole algorithm in and of itself. Like, if we passively consume, or even if we post and get validated externally without
Sure.
staying intentional, it can take any given person. And I'm sure you've been at risk for it. I've been at risk for it.
Mm,
Like, it can take you into a rabbit hole of a version of you weren't meant to be, and that you don't even want to be, but you're
yeah.
following the external validation, or you're following this idea that you think you like, but it's because there's not enough like clarity, because there's always so much noise.
Yeah.
And
So
that
I
has been
can,
just blowing my mind. It changes people's fundamental identity. That
yeah,
blows my mind.
true. I can tell you as someone who's looked into versions of myself, how I think and feel the way that I think and feel. And
Mhm.
as someone who's like, for example, leaning more towards like an anxious attachment style, fear of abandonment, as a
Mhm.
child, all of these sort of things, having, love languages like words of affirmation, physical touch, all these things. I can tell you right now that this, algorithm, the way that it's all been set up, is geared towards someone like me. I love the
Mhm.
likes and the accolades and the external validation and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
That's something that just it presses all of my buttons. So
All the
yeah, I've
buttons.
been way down that rabbit hole, and honestly, it's just been a process of like years, I would say. Like
Mhm.
I'm 47 now, so I would say that when I started to really catch on to what's going on in this sort of system that's rigged
Mhm.
to, my pleasure centers. All right. It's
Mhm.
like, and then when I linked it to porn, I think that's probably around the age of about 30 to 35.
Mhm.
So a ways back, but also my porn
Long after.
consumption, my
Long
porn,
after it started, probably, right? That's what I was
yeah.
gonna
So like
say.
my porn consumption is, I can remember witnessing pornography as a like a 5-year-old child,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
so we're
Yeah,
talking
many people, that's the case.
in the
Yeah. That's why I
80s,
said.
right? So, you
Mhm.
had to come across a VHS in order to
Mhm.
get this, right? So it's not like today where it's on your phone and it's just like endless
Mhm.
hours of scrolling. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
absolutely.
it's it's a it's a massive challenge. So maybe we can talk to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and it's interesting for you, just to bring us back to a couple of points that I think are interesting for
Yeah.
you, like just because of your age, not that you're old at all, but
Mm,
and for me, we'll just say, back in our day, the first system of overstimulation was our family. Like,
sure.
that is, how you said, like, you have anxious attachment, you look for validation, fear of abandonment. Like, for our
Mm,
generation and generations before, that really came from the family system.
absolutely.
Now now that is inherently coming from the algorithm. Like,
Mm,
the family system's still there, but most kids are growing up in front of their screen more so than growing up like really enmeshed in the family system. There's less of that. And so, more people are anxiously attached, not because of that old school family system, because the algorithm has them anxious about, it's the reward prediction. Am I going to get any likes on this? And,
mm,
that has people ramped up in and of itself. And then it leads to more. So, like, it feeds itself,
yeah.
so it's a
Vicious
flywheel, a
cycle.
negative feedback loop.
Mm. So can we
Mhm.
maybe explore into more of the psychology and what's going on in the minds, just so people understand?
Mhm.
Because I think, yeah, anyone who's listening or watching this is going to understand that at some degree they may have or have developed an addiction to the screens. I mean, when you mentioned
Mhm.
like my kids are just turned 19, 15 and 13. So the screens are a massive part of their life and have been for quite some time. I know with my businesses, like I rely on social media marketing for lead generation, for sales and all that sort of thing. So it's kind of like it's one of those things that's become such a part of our lives. Like we said at the outset of this conversation, this is a part of my business model. Like without
Mhm.
this, it's kind of like, I can go preach in the street, but I just don't know how many people I would rally around it.
You would even see how many people would be out there, right? They're
That's
all on
right.
their screens.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I know my husband, I used to work, we have a practice, a brick and mortar practice. I used to practice there with him. I took my business out of the brick and mortar online, like actually before everybody else was. So it was
Mhm.
kind of perfectly timed that way. But he doesn't do any social media. And I just was having a chat with him saying, like, you have to figure out what feels authentic for you, but you really do have to get online because that's where the people are. Like the old school stuff doesn't work anymore. But the intention part, is you have to figure out how you interact with people and the safeguards that you have to put up to protect your peace. I'm at the point in my life where my peace is the most important thing to me.
Mhm.
That and if something disrupts it, then I have to figure out how to get it back in check. And I also have 5 children. I have 6 with my stepson, my bonus son, but I
Wow.
have, I'm the mom of 5 kids, and our kids are called digital natives, the first generation that grew up on the screen, in the screen. And I've had to deal with that for my youngest is 15 and my oldest is 22. So same thing. I had to, raise them. I'm still doing it to try to be really intentional. And all 5 of them interact with the screen in a totally different way. So I've seen it from like not every angle, but for many angles. I have one son who, gamers are going to game. He's totally into gaming. I have one daughter who was putting out hypersexual content, totally had to shut that down. I have another daughter who, like, just when the screens came on, it like gave her an identity crisis and she kind of shrank because she didn't want to be seen online.
Really?
I have another son who he works for me. He works with me on my team. He put his own guardrails on as soon as my work kind of pivoted into screens. And then, of course, my youngest daughter's really, really balanced. She rides horses and she's super intentional on how she puts things out and what she consumes, just because of the learning curve for me, too, and how
Hmm.
to help her. But, the dangers are there and they're real. Like you can just get sucked into it.
Yeah.
And I've been talking about it as kind of a double delusion in that you don't even realize when you're sucked in and you kind of keep going down the wrong path, and you don't even know until you hit this like breaking point. And porn plays into that
Hmm.
in a very large way. A lot of people think, "Oh, I'm just de-stressing, I'm just chilling." And it doesn't have anything to do with my relationship, but they don't understand, like going back to your question about the psychology behind it.
Hmm.
One thing I want people to know, the psychology behind all of this is actually neurological. It's not just psychological, it's neurological. Everything a person experiences in their mind is happening because of shifts in their brain performance, in their brain functioning. And in my work, the assessment that I do when people work with me, the first thing I do is called a brain map. It's QEG, electroencephalogram. And now I have my own app. I can work with people all over the world, but I can see how people's brains perform. So this isn't me just theoretically telling you, like, you know, your brain is changing. I can definitively see those changes. The greater the dysregulation, basically the greater the dysfunction people experience, and they will have anxiety, depression, ADHD. We know this. There's lots of studies and lots of books that are out right now. There's one book out called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. More anxiety and mental health issues are climbing at the same rate as screen use.
Mm.
It's just, there's no guessing about it. And that is because of the neurological changes in the brain. So I'm trying to help people understand this so that they can become intentional. And from my perspective, because of the neurological aspect, porn's a no, even though I know there's a lot of professionals out there that say if you balance it, it's fine. You can't balance a heroin quote unquote habit, so you can't balance a porn habit because it is a compulsion or an addiction. And then the rest of screen time has to be as balanced and intentional as possible.
Yeah, right. So what's happening in the minds of like adults and particularly like children? It wouldn't be any less like the how should I word this? What's happening in our mind from a neurological
Mhm.
standpoint and a psychological standpoint is no different to a teenager to an adult, right? Is that what I'm understanding, or
It
is it
can
our
be
interpretation of what's going
it's
on?
not different like inherently mechanistically. The mechanisms, the
Mhm.
underlying brain mechanisms and how they play out in your mind are the same. And so just to clearly say what those are, number one, there's a dopamine dependency. So basically your brain becomes dependent on the high levels of dopamine that it is receives or is expressing when a person goes into whatever screen time. We know that the increases in dopamine baseline are 2 to 400% on the continuum of what are called supernormal stimuli. Porn's
Mhm.
at the top of that continuum. Social media, emails, text, Snapchat, OnlyFans, dating apps, they all play into that supernormal continuum. But there's a very large spike in dopamine that's released, and then it changes baseline. Ultimately, porn use leads to erectile dysfunction for most men. We can cross that bridge in a minute
Mm.
if you want, but it's
Sure.
because of these changes in dopamine. And then the urge or the feeling compelled to pick your phone up, that is a call from your brain to get a hit of dopamine. It's not about the thing you're doing on the screen at all. It's about the pursuit of more dopamine, which is then reinforced through habit loops. So, like a lot of people have their habits of screen time use. A lot of men will watch porn at night or before bed, and it's a very good, sleep, helping a person to fall asleep, even though it's really disrupting the sleep cycle. But,
Mhm.
it's a routine and that's a habit loop. So, to answer the question about adults versus children or young people, the mechanisms are the same, but those reinforcement loops and those habit loops may have, reinforced themselves for 5, 10, 15, 20 years plus.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the difference. We've really ingrained those neural pathways at that point.
Yeah. Look, I can just tell you that my habit of just grabbing my phone for unknown reasons. Like it doesn't have to be for anything in particular, other than I'm just grabbing it. And sometimes I'll unlock the screen and just open it for no reason at all. Like it's just a absolute mindfuck with
It's crazy.
how my body's wired to grab something constantly for like I said, no real gain. Like even if I have searched on social media and gone through the apps, it's like, well, there's nothing else that's really happened in the last 5 minutes. So why am I
Yeah, but
back?
that's the essence of overstimulation. Your
Yeah.
brain's completely overstimulated. It's used to getting lots of dopamine from, searching, seeking, looking.
Yeah.
And so then when there's a quiet moment or any stillness, you feel uncomfortable
So panic
because
stations. Yeah.
it is. So like people will feel uncomfortable and then they'll find themselves reaching for it. That's what I mean about that dopamine hit.
Mm.
And becoming aware of that is step number one. And I don't love using the word addiction, even though it is true. But I
Sure.
think a lot of people don't resonate with the idea of being addicted to their phone, or they will joke that they're addicted.
Yeah.
But I know that people understand the idea of compulsion. Compulsion is you feel an urge to pick up your phone, or especially when it comes to porn use, when, I work with thousands of men who decide to step away from porn. When
Mm.
they try to quit porn, they go through withdrawal from the dopamine, So
Yeah.
that feeling, the feelings that they feel is because of those changes in baseline dopamine. The changes in baseline dopamine are what lead you to go pick your phone up to get
Yeah.
that hit.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. And I think too, like the thing with pornography is that you've got, like you said, this psychological thing that's going on. Like your chemistry in your body is getting tampered with. You've
Mhm.
got this neurological thing happening. You've also got a physiological thing happening. So there's an action that has been taken. So when people pleasure themselves to porn, and then you've got this whole sort of physiology that is changing within your body as well. So it's kind of like, super amplified, this whole experience. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's all artificial.
Yeah.
It's not the way that brains and bodies were designed. So obviously, evolutionarily, we were that sexuality was part of reproduction.
Hmm.
So, self pleasure wasn't necessarily part of that formula. A major part of that issue is that for most people, that behavior comes from pornography use.
Yeah.
I talk to thousands and thousands of men. It's a very rare person, even though it does exist. So, if somebody's listening and they struggle with masturbation, but they haven't been exposed to porn or haven't used porn consistently,
Hmm.
that does happen, but it's very rare. Most times, a masturbation compulsion or habit or routine, whatever you want to call it is born out of pornography consumption,
Yeah.
where again it's that super normal stimulus, it's fantasy, it's super high levels of dopamine, and then basically a person needs it to feel not just good, they need it to feel normal
Yeah.
or just regular. So that's where the compulsion comes into play. Now you know we've got millions and millions of people masturbating to fall asleep, masturbating to be able to get through work.
Yeah.
And if a person masturbates in the morning, which a lot of people I work with, they do,
Mm.
I want them to know like you need a dopamine hit just to go through your work day. And if porn and masturbation never entered the situation, the work day would be dopamine producing.
Mm.
Our relationships would be dopamine producing. But because of these changes in baseline, our work, relationships, and hobbies no longer hold enough dopamine. That's why people aren't interested in being with their partner. There's all the dopamines connected to pornography or masturbation.
Yeah.
People stop
And
doing their hobbies because
sure.
bowling isn't as exciting as masturbating.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't
And
give you
even
the
with
same hit.
absolutely,
Even
even
though
with young
I
kids,
did just crush my son in Wii bowling, and it felt pretty good to be the reigning family bowling champion.
Yeah,
So
you don't sound competitive at all. I yeah, and it's also like with adolescents and dating and stuff like that, like why go out and subject yourself to rejection when, you never get rejected online, like you can just always get everything satisfied in one,
it
one
is.
little app,
That's exactly, and vulnerability. You don't have to be vulnerable like when
Sure.
it comes to porn, or
Oh
even
yeah.
if it's like OnlyFans or those parasocial relationships where it's transactional and it's all artificial.
Mm,
And it's the state of affairs with dating is really challenging. A lot of the people I work with, they're interested in finding partners. And again, I have, a gaggle of young adults who I'm trying to help them go into the world and find healthy partners. And that's really difficult in hookup culture,
yeah,
dating
for
app
sure.
culture, porn culture, like very difficult. I feel like and I think the numbers support this, that emotionally intelligent people kind of have to hold out longer and look harder to find other emotionally intelligent people.
Yeah, yeah, certainly a frustration. The common thing that I hear is seeking someone who is not only in touch with themselves, emotionally intelligent, but also someone that you can go deeper with on a connection level, and so when people feel like all they're getting is surface level conversations, or they're getting someone who is attracted to the dopamine highs, wherever you want to apply that in life, it seems to be leaving them feeling very empty and I guess I don't know what the word is, sort of like just disenchanted as to what a relationship is if it's even possible. So they just give
Yeah,
up and exit the dating scene and reside to the fact that perhaps I'm just always going to be alone. So
I
um
know. I hear that all the time. I think
yeah, it's
that's
crazy.
tragic. I do
It
think
is
it's more
tragic. It's very
difficult
sad.
than it really is. I think it's more difficult than ever, but not impossible. And in my
I agree.
program, it's not rocket science, but what I
Yeah,
help
yeah.
people do is to go into their community, into the real world, and join groups of like-minded people. And don't get me wrong, the pool of, emotionally is definitely reducing. But like I just talked to my son, Declan, who's 21. He's the one who works for me.
Hmm.
And he joined ski club because it's been very difficult for him to find, cool, nice friends that aren't super toxic and, young women who are potential partners. He had a girlfriend, they broke up. But long story short, he just went on the ski club trip, and had an amazing time with 50 other people who like to ski.
Hmm.
There's real relationships that come from that. And
Yeah.
most people aren't doing that because it's a lot of work to go on a ski club trip. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's
absolutely.
much
Yeah,
easier to
it's
sit home and
effort.
game.
Yeah, it's effort.
Mhm. It's
So
effort.
when it comes to say you would all obviously get pushback when people go, look, like when you said before, you can't manage a like a heroin addiction, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, there'll be people that I've spoken to, guys and things like that, that go, look, if it's balanced, then I know that I can control my porn consumption, and I feel like it's okay. The others might say, look, I don't really go into a particular genre of pornography, but I like erotica and all those sorts of things. Others just see that like maybe for men mostly, like they have the urge all the time and their partner can't satisfy the urge. So
Mhm.
it's almost like porn fills the gaps, where my wife or my partner doesn't. So that's
Mhm.
okay. That's acceptable because
Yeah.
it's
Well,
something
for
that,
that one in particular, we can work our way back, but that
yeah.
one in particular, the chicken and the egg are confused. So
Okay.
the fact that
Explain.
so what I mean by that is, and I hear this all the time, like I have a high libido and my wife doesn't want to be with me this much. That perceived high libido is actually hypersexuality.
Mm,
And hypersexuality is very different. And in my book, I have a book out, Mind Over Explicit Matter. In that book, I talk about this disconnect. Many men think they have a high libido. They've actually been running on hypersexuality since they were, young, 8 years old, 9 years old, so their brains developed in a maladaptive way that sexuality plays that role of self-soothing.
hmm
So being with their partner isn't about like connection and the rush of what's called the happiness trifecta: dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Dopamine at lower levels, but combined. Like that's what a healthy sexual relationship is supposed to be about. But in that case, a man's chasing the very highest levels of dopamine as often as possible. And if their partner can't show up for that, it's a justification. That's why I need porn. But that's a dopamine chase. That's not healthy sexuality. So
mm,
that's why the chicken and the egg are confused on that one. And the same thing goes for the other ideas that, that it's filling the gap and it's harmless. I do have the unique perspective of being able to see people's brains. And we know from brain scans that even one time a month changes a person's brain performance and their outlook in terms of hypersexuality. So, it's kind of like if someone feels fit and they're able to run, except for, they have a heart valve problem in there that they're not sensing, but it is happening in there, the physiology changes. But usually people don't really know that until it's late in the game. And those changes are big, where you have bigger dysfunction, just
mm,
like a heart valve. You don't know you have a problem until you start having heart problems. You go in and you're told, you need surgery soon, type of thing.
hmm Yeah. So you mentioned once on a podcast that when you mentioned hypersexuality and things like that, is that in your experience typically altered via pornography and the hypersexuality side of things? Is that modeled from, say, mum and dad, for example? Are there many variations of why someone can develop a hypersexuality as from a youngster right through to adulthood?
Yeah, I mean, there's variations, but 99.9% of the time it's pornography. Most people
Wow.
don't have parents that are modeling hypersexuality. Some people do.
Sure.
Like I work with a lot of people who have fetishes. I'm doing it in quotes, fetishes, but fetishes are mostly born out of pornography. But there are people that have had experiences when they were younger that they were exposed to something and their brain gets linked to that act because
Mm,
of the high levels of dopamine. And for a very rare amount of people, that's like a real world act. For the vast majority, it's the reinforcement of number one, being, this goes back to another thought we were talking about. Number
hmm
one, being exposed to pornography at a young age. There are scientific studies that show that the younger you're exposed, it actually leads to more consistent use of porn over time. That's that reinforcement loop that I was talking about.
Yeah.
The more these neural pathways are reinforced, then the greater the hypersexuality grows. So when a child finds porn, I call it the seeds of addiction
Hmm.
because they're planted, but they don't feel them being planted at that moment. You know, a young person feels the rush and then they have the brilliant idea to go back to porn, but that's the dopamine calling. And then the more often you go back, there will be tolerance building, there will be escalation, which leads to more consistency, more frequency, longer sessions, more intensity.
Yes.
And it's usually not a horizontal cycle, it's a downward spiral.
Hmm.
And then, that's where my work comes in. I try to step in and change a person's brain performance and get the upward spiral going again.
Yeah. Um, I had an experience when I was younger. Like I said to you, I come across pornography at the age of, I can remember being about 4 or 5 when I come across pornography. So really, really young. I had an experience once where I was being babysat by our neighbor, and she uh, was, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14 or something like that. We were sort of like, 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 or whatever. And there was a situation where she played with me, and then I played with her, and she was, it was a sexual act, right? But
Mhm.
it was one of the things that I clearly remember, and I never put any emphasis on the severity of what that did to me on a psychological level, and like until recently, right? When I say recently, as in like the last, say, 5 years, where
Mhm.
I saw it for what it was, which was, being sort of abused in that and taken advantage of in that at that age, but
Mhm.
also it links so conveniently as to everything that you just said in terms of
Mhm.
um, my constant need for validation, constant need for
Mhm.
attention, and all those sorts of
Mhm.
things, and sort of skipping the part of seeking deeper connection. Just all of those things that are conducive to a happier, harmonious relationship and connection with your partner.
Mhm.
And when it comes to porn, it's one of the things that plagued me for many, many years, right until, again, till recently. This has been it's, I'm almost ashamed to say it, but I guess you would
Mm.
experience this a lot.
Yes.
I like porn is, yeah, I've experienced the thing where I've watched the porn, and it needed to be more intense in order for me to feel aroused. So
Mhm.
it never got to a point where I had any erectile dysfunction or anything like that, but certainly
Mhm.
in order to feel the arousal that I wanted, it had to be super intense. The other
Mhm.
thing that affected me more than anything else from a confidence level was the comparison between male porn stars and myself. From
Yeah,
a
it's
from a
wild, right?
physiological
Mhm.
level, I'm just like, I'm not like them. So, I had
Mhm.
this hang up around size and performance and all that kind of stuff for
Yes.
decades.
Yes.
It really did a number on my confidence as a man, as like in terms of love making and performance, and all of those things affected me like on such a deep level psychologically.
Mhm.
It's taken me quite a few years to unravel all of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's so much there to unpack and you're already doing it. So that's the beautiful part. But many people don't even realize what you're
No.
discussing right now. Okay. I'll go backwards yet again. Is
Okay.
that for the first time in history to the magnitude since high speed internet porn, we can talk about the differences there, but since high speed internet porn in the 90s, 91 is when it first came out, but obviously it got easier and easier as it goes from there. Men's self image and body image have been tanking. So I've made a bunch of videos on how porn is crushing masculinity. So it is making it so that men compare their bodies to actors, performers. They're
Mm,
not real. And we know that there's a lot of camera angles and enhancements. And I was on Jubilee Media's The Middle Ground where I debated porn performers. And
really?
one Yeah, I don't know how I became debate the porn performer girl, but there's some more people who want me to debate porn performers. I'm like, I'm down for it because let's
Yeah.
have some discussions here. And I actually really enjoyed it. There was a young man who's a porn performer, and I really enjoyed talking with him in the discussion because he basically is like, it's so fake, and it's all directed. We're using a lot of things to make it, seem the way that it seems. Basically, it's fantasy. None of it's real. It's
Mm.
artificial. So now we have a generation of men comparing themselves, thinking just inherently that this comparison is apples to apples, but it's apples to oranges. And we know scientifically it's doing a number on people's self image and body image, men and women. At the same time, men are watching other men all the time, and it's creating confusion in sexuality. And I work with a lot of people. They're like, I think I'm attracted to men, but I don't think so in the real world. There's a lot happening there because
Mm.
of watching other men and the dopamine that's associated with it and the comparison aspect. People don't realize this. They really have, like, I wanted to make another comment is you said it too about your performance,
Hmm.
right? Sex is supposed to be an experience, not a performance.
Yeah.
But now people have this framework that it is a performance. So now when you're in the bedroom with your partner, you're performing, like mainly for you, because many partners don't want a performance. They want connection. They want an awesome experience, not
Yeah.
a performance. So now we've got this framework of performance. And all of that fantasy and artificial stimulation leads to desensitization of the dopamine receptors. That's where ED comes from. So many men do first experience it as needing much higher levels of arousal from pornography, but then in the bedroom. So, like, it translates into you're being with your partner, but it doesn't do it for you anymore. You need all the bells and whistles brought out to be able to, enjoy that
Mm.
performance or experience. And then going back to, what you're talking about with the babysitter is a traumatic experience. And young brains aren't meant to deal with pornography in the first place, but sexuality in general. So it creates a lot of anxiety when you do experience abuse, but it's also coupled with arousal. So now you've got the arousal system cranked up and the survival system in your brain cranked up. You've got cortisol flowing, but you've got dopamine flowing because it is a physiological response. One that at the age of 5, you're too young to be having. You shouldn't
Yeah.
have been put in a position where you're having an arousal experience. And it becomes very confusing over time. And porn plays into that. A lot of porn is anxiety provoking. I call it the friction point. I took motorcycle lessons a few years back. And, you have to hit the throttle at the perfect amount where, then the motorcycle goes. But, the idea is that when you have anxiety and arousal, it hits that sweet spot of the friction point that many people are looking for in porn. But
Hmm.
it all distorts brain performance, the mind, the psychology, and the physiology, mental and physical health.
Yeah. Yeah, you pretty much just explained my my last probably 35 years of experience. I again, I just want to reiterate, it's one of those things for me that when I think to my association to my own self-value and self-worth, I hadn't I'd really underestimated and most often skipped over the link between that experience as a 5-year-old child and also the porn link. Like it's one of those things. It absolutely plagued me, and you can see like I lift weights, I train, I like to feel strong. I do mixed martial arts with my kids. Like I'm trying to relive
Yeah.
my youth at every turn. So it's one of these things where it is it's almost like a strength, but I can see where it's spawned from. It's not just wanting to be athletic. There's almost like an undercurrent of
Mm-hmm.
not feeling enough, not feeling good enough, not feeling valued, but it's also just
Yes.
my own self-worth, so
Yeah, and that
outwardly.
all of that is ego. I'm
Yeah,
sure you've,
absolutely.
kind of analyzed the ego. And
Mm,
for me, of course, I've experienced that, and I have some strategies that I use to stay away from ego, or at least learn from ego. Like,
Yeah.
ego is going to be pleasure and pain. It's not presence, it's not joy. It's pleasure at high levels that leads to the pain at higher levels. But I do think you can kind of, purify your ego patterns and routines. So, like for me, I'm a total overfunctioner. No
Hmm.
surprise there, right? I overperform at all times. I have 5 different college degrees, and then I went back to school to go to medical school. I had 5 young children. Like, it's an insane decision.
Sure.
When I look back at it, one of the most freeing experiences was sending a letter back in the letter days that I'm not coming. Like, I got in and I thought to myself, you are nuts if you go. You will destroy this family. You know what I mean? But my
Sure.
ego's telling me, get another degree because that's how you validate, become even smarter.
Yeah.
But what I try to do now is to not like feel, and same thing for you, like with your strength. You want to feel your strength as, an asset of authenticity to be the best version of yourself. So
Hmm.
for me, like when I learn new things, that honestly, it's the reason I created my YouTube channels. I have 3 YouTube channels that I help people because I thought to myself, I spend all my time learning because I love it. I'm going to share everything that I learn. This way, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm the person helping as many people as possible through my need to continually need to understand things.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of like take my ego and make it the best version of myself. And that's what I want everybody to do, is to figure out, okay, you came up with these patterns to feel safe and secure when you were young, and you're still playing them out. And
Mhm.
some of them die really, really hard. Some of them I encourage you to, no longer feed the neural pathways like porn use. But when it comes to working out in mixed martial arts, you want to turn that validation inward, not like, all these people see me and I feel strong or I look
Yeah, yeah.
strong.
Exactly
It's,
right.
I can do this, like quietly validating yourself. And when you learn to do that, that's how the identity formation becomes healthy again.
Mm. Trish, on a personal level, like you are clearly a go-getter, right? So, but you're married, as far as I know, and you've got 5 children, right?
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a dynamic that I'm just going to assume that
Hmm.
from a success perspective, monetarily, like your busy line must be like way up there, and you've just
Hmm.
explained that you've got this. Need to I don't know, fill your calendar and
Hmm.
accomplish as much as you possibly can. I would imagine just listening to you and having listened to your podcast that it would be partly derived from you've got a mission, like you want to serve to a higher purpose. There's something that you have acquired in terms of knowledge. You feel like I got to learn this and now I got to teach it, so it's like, if
Hmm.
you to learn and to teach is not to learn. Like you need to spread the word and help people. But if I'm going to help people, I might as well get paid. So now
Hmm.
a term that's been used a lot over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years is like, you're a boss babe. You know what I mean? Like you're you're trying
Yep.
to, crush it. But
Hmm.
we also are living in a world where, as you said a minute ago, men have like got the lowest testosterone ever, right? We've been feminized to a large degree, like, to be a masculine man, a true leader is like toxic nowadays, but also you've got this current of boss babes and I don't need a man and I'm hyper independent and all the rest of it. So you've got these real masculine women, which
Hmm.
are entering into everyone's relationship, and now we've got competitiveness. So it's like, no, I don't
Oh,
need men. Men are, not the dominant ones anymore, and we
it's
want
awful.
equality. So you see where I'm going with all this, right?
Oh,
But you're,
I do, and I feel it on a daily basis. But
I bet.
finish, and then
Yeah,
I'll
no, well,
comment.
that's
Finish,
me. Like,
please.
I'm curious to get an excerpt out of your own life,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
if I was married to you and you were crushing it at work, but then you come home and boss me around, I would have been emasculated within 5 minutes,
I don't
right?
I don't do that. I don't do that.
I'm saying you
And
do. I'm just saying, like,
no, no,
how do you manage
and
it, you
I
know?
this is what I totally hear you and feel everything you're talking about. And actually, it's one of my greatest concerns for society is families. Like the main reason I am really here is relationships.
Sure.
Because when porn use enters, it destroys relationships. When relationships get destroyed, people are less happy, families get, so dysfunctional.
Hmm.
And I do have to walk that walk in my life, and it is very challenging. First thing I can tell you is I'm a natural over functioner. If it was up to me, if I left it to my ego, let's just put it, I
Sure.
would just work all day, every day, and it would not, I'd feel great about it. It wouldn't bother me at all. I know that that is terrible for me. So I have created a schedule that I make myself stick to. And I'm very proud to say I'm the most awesome mom in the world. I'm super responsive. I have an amazing relationship with all of my kids. I spend lots of time with them. The me of 15 years ago, 15 years ago, I was keeping them alive. But before, they were all young, that wasn't the case. And the same thing with my husband. Like, I know the dynamic is stressful, but we talk about it. And he's really funny. My husband could destroy anybody. He's like you. He's thin, but he's not a weak man.
Hmm.
He could literally destroy anybody. But it is definitely a strange dynamic because I am a strong personality, but so is he. And what I want for myself, for you and everybody else is to have an interdependent relationship. But it requires constant reanalysis. Because I find, well, our relationship was super codependent. So, and I talk about this in my book, not to the length I'm going to tell you. But like when we first got together, my husband said the thing he loved about me was I put him on a pedestal. But then I grew more emotionally intelligent and like I don't put him on a pedestal, but I respect him. I support him. I never tell him one thing to do at all. Like I never. And I watch my friends. My friends tell their husbands what to do all day, every day. If we go out for dinner, they're barking their husbands around. And, that's not the case with my husband and I.
Hmm.
And that's what interdependence is. And like my husband, I stepped out of our office, like I told you before, mainly because like I work twice as much as he does. So it was creating all these like bad dynamics in the office and it carried over to our relationship. And I'm like, for the sake of our relationship, I need to step out of this. You take charge of the office, I take charge of my thing. We show up next to each other. That's what enmeshment is. I it took me years, by the way. I untangled it. And then we just talked about it over the weekend. He's so funny because he's like, I want to, yell right now. But I'm like, there's no yelling at me. But his natural stress response is fight. Mine is flight. So
Yeah.
and
Wow.
and and he was really cute because he's like, I'm showing up right now. I'm like, how? He's like, I'm being available.
Yeah.
But that really resonated
Yeah.
with me because I walked away thinking he's using a lot of energy just
Restraint.
to emotionally be available.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like how wonderful is that? And I wasn't talking about anything intense. I was just saying like, you know, I lately we're entering a new season in our life because we have four kids in college.
Hmm.
Our youngest daughter is a freshman in high school. So there's 4 more years of her being at home. And I've kind of made this plan of the things that I want to do with her. And like, I see my life falling out. So I shared it with him. And I said, I encourage you to think about what you think your next 4 years is and what you think the 4 years after that might look like. Because I don't plan on living here forever. And he still has the office.
Mm.
So he either has to become location free or we have to agree upon what our relationship's going to look like. I never said you
Wow.
have to become location free, figure it
Sure.
out. I just said, like, I don't envision myself living here forever. And I would love for us to do that together, but I think you should figure out what you want it to look like.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
he's like, that's a
That's
lot, right?
intentional.
That's a lot for a dude to have to consider. But,
Mm.
most wives would go, oh, we're moving wherever. So
Yeah.
figure it out, become
Pack your
location free.
shit.
I'm like, pack your shit. Exactly. But, at the end of the road, like I want him to look back on his life and he lived the life that he wanted to.
Mm,
Obviously, like in consideration of me and our family, but I don't want him to live the life that I wanted to live. And
mm,
but I want to live the life that I want to live in our relationship. That's very tricky. But I feel like I'm crushing it so far in terms of like being able to move through these different seasons and show up and talk about it and like
yeah.
stay true to what matters to me, not folding because it ruffles his feathers.
Mm,
And then we both keep coming back to try to figure out what the next thing looks like. And it's pretty cool when
yeah.
you learn to do that, like totally breaking codependency. But just one more thing, and then I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, good.
The opposite of codependency is you're too tightly enmeshed.
Hmm.
The opposite is disengaged. And I was running that line for a little while. Like
Yeah.
I broke the codependency, but I didn't know how to be interdependent, and neither did he. So we kind of went too far where we're like really becoming independent. But
Mm,
that doesn't feel good either because now you don't have a shared existence
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
So
Just
then
housemates.
we've come, uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, we need to get on the same page so we can get back to this middle. And we've been working on it. So
Mm,
that's life. It's
that is
not for the
life.
faint of
Yeah.
heart. It's not
Look,
for the faint of heart.
it's definitely not. It's very confronting to have difficult conversations like that because you really have to think deeply about a future. Like, for example, what you just explained, your husband has to think about a future together that involves both of your ideals in terms of, future plans. And that could be met with like, I don't think I fit in your timeline of events, which is fucking wild. You've got
Totally.
5 kids and you've built this whole life, so it's a very confronting conversation. But it's one of those things I think in relationships, had you had the ability or someone there to teach you or to learn from to feel uncomfortable in certain scenarios, you'd certainly have different relationships and different perspectives on life because you celebrated each other's independency, but again, you weren't so independent that you were just like doing the things that you needed to do, but being together, which is, like you said, is problematic. But then that whole enmeshment, happy wife, happy life, the whole thing. I wear the pants in the family. She tells me what size and what color. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
all of that kind of thing is like I'll just do everything to make him happy or do everything to make her happy.
Mhm.
That sort of subservient, self-sacrificing. I think that's equally problematic. So the balance
Yeah.
between the
And it
two.
leads to resentment and
Oh yeah.
contempt.
Oh
And
yes, 100%.
John Gottman, who's the father of relationships, he
Yeah.
says that the number one reason people get divorced is because of contempt. And
Hmm.
contempt is kind of like low key hate underneath all
Yeah,
the
that's
love.
exactly
It's
right.
like low key hate that makes you think your partner's like, a little below you.
Yeah.
And that's rough. And that's where the conversations come into play. I think in a relationship too, at any given moment, one partner is a little bit more sane than the other. And I've
Yeah.
learned that in ours, like at any given moment, I'm more in my ego, pleasure, pain, or my husband's in his ego, pleasure, pain. The one who can kind of see the way out is the one who has to step up and kind of, help both partners do it because it's
Yeah.
not easy.
Mm.
But
So.
my parents are in their 80s and they don't have any identity. My dad gave his identity away. I
Mm.
actually for a long while, hopefully my parents never hear this podcast. They know
Yeah.
my ideas, but I'm sure they wouldn't enjoy hearing them
Yeah.
yet again. Is that for a long while I was kind of mad at my mom, not mad, but like I blamed my mom for stealing my dad's identity. And then I had the realization nobody can steal your identity. They
Yeah.
can't. They literally can't.
Way.
You can give it away because of the pressure from that person.
Mm.
Then it shifted to my dad. Like my dad gave up his identity. He has one left that he refuses to give up, even though she's tried to get him to. His friends come over every Wednesday night. They've come
Hmm.
over for 60 years. And
All
she's
right.
tried to get him to stop. He's given up every other hobby, every other love, everything
Yeah.
except for Wednesday nights. But, he gave it up. She didn't take it from him. He gave it up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that acquiescence and is one of the things that's just it's a love destroyer. It kills relationships. and connection. And the thing is like, we're living in a time where people are yearning for connection more now than ever. We feel like since
Mhm.
COVID and all the bullshit around separating everyone and all that kind of stuff has just done a number on people, and they now for they're desiring that connection. And that's the thing between like the delineation between humans and animals. Like I know in another conversation about non-monogamy and monogamy relationships. You talk about monogamous relationships. You talked earlier about the hookup culture. We've got a thing around body count now. Like I'm listening to people talk about how many people they slept with and bragging about it and all this kind of stuff. It's just very distorted. But
Mhm.
I guess in rounding this out, I think I know what you're going to say, but I wanted to hear how you counterbalance and course correct these sort of underdeveloped brains that we've created over the years. Like, so I would
Mhm.
say that my own personal evolution in terms of, say, more spiritual, emotional, all those sort of things has really taken like this sort of real upward trend in the last 5 to 7 years. Like, it's sort of really scooted up. So I feel like on a mind body spirit connection, I've kind of leveled up my game and I'm ready to go to that next level. We still live in a world where, man, it costs a lot of money to fucking live these days. Like, you got 5 kids, I got three. I mean, these guys are eating me out of the house, right? So it's
I know
just
my daughter texted me for money, and then she's like, "Man, it's expensive to live." I text her back, "It's expensive to live like we do, for sure."
yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, can I ask
Last
you a
week,
question? Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
What do you think was an impetus for this big trend of yours in the last 7 years or so?
Um,
Just to add to the points that I
yeah, no,
want to
that's all
make.
good. So the impetus was I sold a business in 2015, so it was kind of like
Mhm.
reinventing myself after being in an industry for 10 or 12 years. And
Mhm.
so just reinventing myself to find out where I want to be.
Mhm.
And then honestly, like COVID, because I built a new version of myself. And again, it was
Mhm.
all around this digital space and things like that, and online and working remotely and all that kind of jazz. But like Stephen Covey says, you build up a ladder of success only to realize that it's leaning against the wrong fucking wall. So,
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
but the true blessing was COVID because I opened up a new business and the moment I opened is the moment that we had this virus that was supposed to kill everyone around the world, and my business got shut down. It caused me to take time out, so I was just like stressed
Mhm.
out, but also we couldn't work. In Australia here, I had nearly 9 months worth of business closures, right? So you
Mhm.
got a long time to kind of contemplate life.
Yep. I love it
My
because that's
marriage
exactly that.
my
That's
marriage
exactly
broke
what's.
down. Yeah.
Oh,
So
really?
it was so that
Uh,
there, I mean, my marriage, yeah, had many chinks, in its armor anyway.
mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But it kind of exacerbated like and sort of highlighted all the holes. And when I had that time to be alone, so that was
Mhm.
the true catalyst. So it was kind of like this evolution of having everything financially, marriage, like all that kind of stuff. The divorce, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
Just my
Mhm.
3 kids, like all of that dynamic just feeding into itself. So it just
Mhm.
caused me to either capitulate or level up, and I kind of
Mhm.
just did this big funk and then come back up, and
Yeah,
that's
I love it.
that's the evolution.
I mean, and my reason for asking, not that I love that you struggled financially and you're, and you experienced divorce, but what I do love is that, the opportunity presented itself to you and you used it. The ego, going back to the ego really only learns from pain.
Mm,
So like, most of my experiences are born out of pain. What I'm trying to do now is to be able to create the quiet that COVID afforded you, right? It
Yep.
afforded you like your script of the past no longer applied. You
Hmm.
had quiet time, even though you're stressed out, and you were able to think about yourself outside the dynamic of your relationship, which most people don't do. Like going back to
Hmm.
the conversation with my husband and I, most couples don't do that. And my husband's biggest, argument, I guess, would be we have to think as a we. I'm like, babe, like I worked so hard to untangle codependency. I want to think as me, as an I with you. I don't want us to have we thinking. So, like, what happened for you was you had that quiet time. You had to formulate a new script, a new template, and it was for yourself. It wasn't just completely informed by another person. This is what I want people to do before they have that rock bottom moment.
Mm.
We can do this at any moment. And I mean, it did come out of a lot of pain when I first did this when I was young. But, I was always the black sheep of my family, but I was always trying to be, a white ish sheep just within the family. But there came a time where I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. So I had to I'm not doing the script of the past. And I started my, spiritual journey, my personal transformation journey. I kept getting degrees too at the same time because that's how I was conditioned. But, and then I'm like, but I will tell you since then, and that was probably 25, 26 years ago that I did that. Every single year on New Year's Day, I get a new journal. I do it throughout the year now too, but every New Year's Day, it's one of my favorite routines. And I write out the life that I want to have every year. It's basically the same. I use the same template, but I change things I look at the year I had last year, what I learned, how I grew, and the things that I want to do this year to keep me moving in the direction so that on my deathbed, I look back and I have, it's not about achievement, it's about experiencing the things that I want to. But you can't, like going back to our original discussion, it can't be passive. It
Mm.
has to be intentional. And I've had some of the coolest aha moments. I've had a new one this year, which is really fun for me. And it's only one shift in language, but it means everything to me. Is that on that? I always draw this picture too. I can't draw very well. It's a stick figure of me, and I put words around it of the things that I want to be. It's a be do have type of thing. I'm sure
Hmm.
think in that space, but I always put that I want to be a great mom. And then this year I put the word matriarch, which that's a total shift because like I've had to like physically do the momming for the kids for the longest time. But
Mm.
now I'm kind of just like this example. And I set example and I show up for them and help them differently. Like now I'm leading more with energy than with, dinner, and that was a really cool shift for me this year. One other thing, which is not as, theoretical, is that I learned how to travel by myself this year. I've
Hmm.
gone a whole bunch of places and it's been amazing. Dinner by myself, going to see things by myself. Like if you would have asked me even last year, like, can you go travel by yourself and enjoy yourself? The answer would be no. I didn't know how to do it.
Mm.
And, I now know how to do that, which also comes from being more interdependent because in the past if I would have went, I would have just been jonesing to get back to my husband because that codependent connection was so strong, I could have never enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
So I've been like, mentally high-fiving myself of the growth that I've had this year. I mean, that's not world peace or anything, but
I
it
know
really
what you
is
mean.
important for, it's important for what I want to create. So I
Mm.
would love for people just to sit down and think back to you before, anything came in like trauma or abuse or porn or screens. What did that little version of yourself, like in your heart, what did you want? And
Mhm.
start doing some of that, and the things you love to do and you stop doing because the dopamine stopped being there, do those things. I love to box. I talk about it all the time. My daughter rides horses, and I haven't gone to a gym in years. My husband and I met in a gym because I've always been a gym person, but obviously having 5 kids, I have a home gym and I've been working out there. But
Yep.
my daughter rides horses, and I take her to the barn multiple times a week, a lot of times a week. So I just went to the gym yesterday to like check out the gym that's 8 minutes from there, and they have boxing classes too. And I'm like totally psyched because I box by myself here at home. And I'm like psyched now about, being able to get back into the gym after a 20-year hiatus.
Mm.
But, that's for me. And that's in alignment with the things that are fun for me in my life. This is what I want people. You don't want to go boxing? Don't go boxing, but figure out what you do want to do and have the courage to go do it. Reinvent yourself without having to get divorced, lose all your money, and,
Yeah.
have an existential crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think a lot of what you're talking to as well is like people in their busy lives are just busy being busy and never intentional with what outcomes they want to achieve. This goes for falling into the trap of just doom scrolling on social media, watching porn endlessly, feeling like you need to masturbate to rest, drink to relax, smoke to relax, all of these things which are, counterproductive to and not conducive to good health at all, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially. Like there's just so many things that are impacted on people's lives. So it's a very, very sort of simplistic way of living. And I think that a lot of people probably don't I think they underestimate just how simple one little change can have like a just a deep, profound effect on your life. I love the fact that you can go away by yourself. Again, this is just a leaf out of my life during the COVID period was that time on my own. A lot of parents that are separated and have like a, 1 week on, 1 week off with their kids would probably relate to me when you first have the first week off or the first few months where you have on one off. You feel really guilty as a parent, like not being there and not having the connection with your children. But then after a while, you actually feel really good about having a break and having time to do things on your own schedule and not have to run around and all that kind of stuff. And so then it's sort of like, then you feel guilty again about feeling good about, not having time on your own. But the benefits of all of that, and if anyone wants to maybe utilize some of what you said and my own experience and inject that into their lives as a happily married couple with children, having
Mhm.
time to just be on your own and away, and then you appreciate when you come back. And there are a lot of like huge benefits and upticks to a happier, more solid
Yes.
foundation in your relationship with yourself foremost, because
Yep.
you've proven to yourself,
And
like, I can go away,
it's interesting because I did it on purpose too. And
Sure.
I practice what you're talking about. Like
Mhm.
I have a thing that I tell people in relationships, just pretend you're divorced. Like, especially if you're struggling. Honestly, if and I've done this in my relationship back in one of those other times when my husband was making himself available
Yeah.
in the kitchen, is like, especially if you feel tension in your relationship, like, just pretend you're divorced. You don't have to get divorced. What you need is space to figure out what's not working.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying stay in a relationship if it's just truly not working, but give yourself the space. Um, there was a season on my stepson Connor, he just turned what, 35. Yesterday was his birthday, he turned 35.
Mhm.
And he moved down. He lives by us. He's lived down here for a couple of years. A while ago, my husband and I were going through one of those reinvention times in our relationship. And Connor comes over, and all of my husband's stuff is moved into the basement, into the
Mhm.
guest room. But we weren't like fighting, and he's looking at us like, "Yo, why are you two like? Why is all dad's stuff down, but you still are coexisting?" And it was a time where we're both like, we just need time apart. You go figure yourself out. And it was just a deliberate like space in our own homes.
Mm.
And then we made a schedule of the kids, the times he's going to do all the things for the kids, when he's going to make dinner, so that I could go get some time away from the family also. And that was really the beginning of us breaking all these codependent patterns, because I didn't feel like I could do it in our regular routine. And he eventually agreed with me. He loved it in the basement. And you're totally right about those dynamics. Then I was mad how much he was liking it in the basement by himself. I was.
I
I'm
bet.
like, this is nuts. This man's enjoying. I'm like so
Yeah.
disappointed. And like, I'm like, I suggested this, and I can hear him partying down there. You know what I mean? And
Backfiring.
there I'm like, but like that
That's
actually
ridiculous.
allowed him right? It was really good for him and it was
Yeah.
really good for me. And it allowed us to come back together stronger than ever. And, I think if you can keep showing up like that, you end up getting the relationship you want. You don't have to leave and try to reinvent it.
Mm. Yeah, great points.
You get the
So,
you get the you want also, but it's
yeah.
intention. You can't just,
Look, what I
you
love
can't,
about what you're saying is that, when you talk to the version of yourself that you want to create, like when you say I journal and I write down the version of the life that I want to live, that is speaking my language, So it's one of those
Mhm.
things where in the absence of that, your default is to do whatever society says or whatever you think society thinks you should do, right? So you have no identity, you have no self-awareness, and everything that's coming out of our chat so far is becoming aware. And then obviously that's only just part of some of the parts, right? Like once you're aware, you need to do something about it, embody what you know and live congruently with those things. And I think when it comes back to addictions, particularly when the impacts of porn and relationship, I mean, once you know it, it's just a silent creep. If you don't do anything about it, it just festers over time. And eventually, that sort of low level hate that you talked about earlier is like, it permeates through your relationship. And all of a sudden, your whole body is infected. It's almost like you've got a cancer that you
Mhm.
can't get rid of. So,
Mhm.
Trish, I've loved this conversation. I know,
Yes.
your thing is like pornography and you're helping people quit the habits and stuff like that. But what I truly appreciate about this conversation is that it's quite a well-rounded look at your life, your relationship with yourself, with others, with your children, and how everything is impacting you on a mind, body, soul level. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of
porn's not the problem. Porn's the
absolutely.
symptom. Porn's the
Yes,
symptom
yes.
of the all the other stuff we talked about. That's the
Mm.
problem. And people don't like know how to look at that and what to do about it.
Mm.
And if you just have the, self-awareness, if you can just that's why I love, like I've said it a couple times on accident, kind of like a deathbed
Mm.
um exercise where like on your deathbed, when you look back, what is the life you wanted to live? We could die at any moment. Any one of us. We hear it in the
Mm.
news all the time. A person was here and now they're not. So if you think about like if I were to die tomorrow, like am I showing up in all the aspects of my life in the way that I want? And I'm nowhere near perfect, but I'm either showing up or I'm trying. And you
Mm.
know what I mean? And I'm trying and I'm succeeding to some level, moving towards that thing. I'm not floating without the intention of what I want. And that's why I think that's really powerful for people. Are you doing what you want in this life? Are you making your impact? Are you enjoying your people? Are you actually enjoying your experience here?
Mm. Yeah, so true. I'm sure you're going to send me a bunch of links as to where people can find you. I'm interested
Mhm.
to get a hold of your books as well. And so you got
Yeah.
one book out and you got one book coming. Is that how I
I
understand
do.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yep. The
Okay.
first book's Mind Over Explicit Matter. It's on pornography addiction and building, purpose and intimacy. And then my next book, which I think I just changed the title, but the publisher may change the title anyways,
Yeah.
is on actually all the other stuff. But that's in Mind Over Explicit Matter also. But the next book's on the world of overstimulation in all ways digital, but also talking about that family overstimulation
Mhm.
and how identity is being impacted by all of this external validation and the really stronger lessons on how to claim and forge your identity from the inside out, and then how to put those guardrails on to protect yourself so that you don't fall victim back into just becoming what the world tells you to because you've
Mm.
got to like a heart or some artificial fire.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Amazing.
yeah,
I
so
look forward
yeah, I'm
to when
working
that
on, really
comes out.
excited. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
send me all of that information. I'll definitely pop it in the show notes and I
Yeah, awesome.
encourage
Thank you.
people to listen to your podcast. I think it's great.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah,
I'm
no problem.
glad we
I'm
got
so
to make
glad we were. Yep, third time is a charm,
Yeah,
apparently.
absolutely.
All right.
All
Well,
right,
have a
Trish.
great day. Thanks for making the effort because I know after a couple times it gets annoying. So
Yeah,
I
it's all good.
appreciate it.
My
All
pleasure.
right.
I'll talk to you
We'll
soon.
stay connected. Okay. Yeah.
Bye
Thanks.
now.
Bye, Adrian. Okay. Bye.